head of the middle school and said, I have a question about science. And she said, you've got to talk to Mrs. Miller. So I did, and that started what became a beautiful friendship and encouragement into pursuing questions that don't fit inside any box in any classroom. From Bryn Mawr, I went on to college and studied chemistry and physics, even though I knew one day I wanted to be a physician scientist, because I really wanted to understand how things worked and wanted to keep pursuing those questions. But I had a little bit of a crisis moment as I was graduating college and said, you know, I'm not sure if I want to be a physician scientist or a scientist, and what's the difference? So I decided to wait a year, and taking time and sort of space and all that is always a good thing, because it can only teach you more. So I actually went and did basic science research for a year in Germany, which I was there 2 weeks and said I definitely need to see patients in the future. So that question was answered. But then also at the same time was able to sort of start another part of the work-life balance piece, because I actually met my husband, who was also an exchange student at the same university. And sort of over the next couple of years, realized that growing as a physician and a scientist and taking those questions and being able to pursue them outside the box, just like experiences that Susan just talked about take you in different places, it really was a matter of meeting a patient who had a little bit of body asymmetry and no other features that were suggestive of this syndrome. I'm a geneticist now, so we've learned lots of syndromes. The most common one you'll probably see is something called Down syndrome. And it's fairly recognizable, but this was something a little different. It wasn't quite fitting in any boxes. And the parents asked me 2 questions when I saw this little girl. And they said, okay, what does she have? And what are we going to do about it? And so I said, well, I think she could have this syndrome called Becker-Wiedemann syndrome, because she's got this body asymmetry and this overgrowth, but we're not really sure. So what we should do is we'll check her blood and do the test, and we didn't find anything in that test. But we said, okay, because we know this syndrome is related to cancer, we're going to screen her for cancer. And it turns out that she was a year later, she actually developed cancer. And parents asked me the same question. Why did this happen? What's going on? And I said, well, now we're going to test. And we actually found when we tested not just the cancer, but some of her skin, that she did actually have this syndrome. But I was like, okay, we solved question 1. What does she have? Like, what's going on here? But then they said, well, why did she develop cancer? And I said, well, Becker-Wiedemann syndrome was discovered in the 1960s. And then the genetic type of BWS and how to diagnose it was discovered in the 1990s. Somebody must have studied this. It turns out nobody had. Like, nobody had asked that question and sort of taken it through. So I've spent the last 15 plus years now trying to answer that question. We don't have answers yet, but we have a lot more information than we did many years ago. And one of the things that I learned that really started here was you've got to ask those questions. And just because somebody hasn't done it before doesn't mean you can't do it. And you can't ask questions that could lead to helping, whether it's the person next door or a whole group of people. And that really starts in this room.
Program here. I was a hockey player. I played for Maureen Walsh, who used to be the headmistress here, and it's just like so dear to me, and she's here today. But you know, through the ice hockey program, I always was the person who was building groups of people. I was always the diplomat. I was always getting people from different backgrounds to put on skates and try something new. And that's always been my role since. Even though I've kind of entered different disciplines, I'm always the person who's getting people from all different kinds of backgrounds to sit at the same table and talk to each other. I did it in college because I was an RA and I had to, you know, get football players to make the right decisions and get people to kind of decide how to handle large, you know, feminist and LGBT activism questions that we were having on campus. And then after college, I started in construction management, and that job actually was a total lucky thing. I had this woman in college who I really admired, and I just thought she was great, and she wanted to go be a construction manager, so I thought, why not? Why not try something new? And I went to my interview, and I said, you know, basically, I don't know anything about construction management. I can run groups of men, so teach me how to do it. And they said, okay, that's half the job. So I got really lucky, and I was, you know, terrible at it for the first 2 years, and then, you know, I listened to people. shine. So I'm able to kind of, work with people in the field and able to get work done in construction, but I'm also able to speak the language of designers and understand building codes, design intent, and all of those kinds of constraints. And then now I'm also institution facing. So, if a Broadway theater or a church or Central Park is my client right now, if they want to build a building, it's a significant investment for them as an institution. So the way that they go about designing and constructing tells a story about their institution as well. So all of this kind of developed out of, I missed a little bit of a chapter there in that I studied international relations in college, which sounds irrelevant for construction, but actually a lot of my job is about mediation and understanding power and understanding how to identify what resources people need and how to empathize with the problems that they're going through, even if they feel like your enemy at the time. So that's been the kind of narrative through everything I've done so far.
Thank you guys so much for that. We still have a nice hockey team.
Oh, thanks.
And we still do have like a lot of the stuff that you guys mentioned about your time at Bryn Mawr and then coming out of Bryn Mawr. Our next question is, could each of you walk us through a typical day in your life, or just a little bit about what you do day to day in your careers?
I'm always looking for creative ideas for new programs in public health, and then trying to match it up with money. I worked for some wealthy people, and they want to do good things with their money, usually. So that's what I'm doing, entrepreneur programs.
I would say, do you want to know about yesterday or the day before? Because it's never the same. And I think one of the things when you bring things together, and it seems like in many ways all three of us, a common theme here is that we're bringing different things together to make a position, to make what we consider a job, but it's also kind of an adventure. So for me, on Wednesday, I saw 20 patients in clinic and then 3 patients in the hospital afterwards. So that was a pretty full day. Yesterday, started the day with giving a lecture and then met with my lab group and talked about all the ongoing experiments in the lab, and then finished writing a grant that was submitted. So, oh, and I forgot, both days went home and spent time with my kids and hearing about their days and their adventures.
I'm usually refereeing between some group of people. If we're trying to build a concrete wall, I've got the concrete foreman who's worried about his own resource and optimization of his crew and his materials. I've got the structural engineer who wants to make sure that the things are going to be built without the right tolerances with building code. And I've got an architect who's focused on the aesthetics and the program of the building. So a lot of times those efforts conflict with each other because it's a little easier to do something cheaper if it's not as pretty, and it's a little easier to, or something that has been designed to a tolerance that can't be built, and you have to rely on the knowledge of the person who's been doing it for 30 years. So I'm constantly just asking myself, what do the people around me need? What are they trying to get to do? And then I have to get everyone to the same position of building the highest quality product that we have. So I'm usually handling some fire. Not actual fire, usually.
Great, thank you for all of those. Something that you've all kind of touched on is like collaborating or kind of going to a new place or learning about new people. And so how has engaging across differences helped you grow? Can you tell us about something you've changed your mind about or developed a new perspective on? And how did you come to that change?
I'm always making you go first. I mean, I think I've learned from many people. I've learned from my parents, my kids, but I would say mostly my patients. And learning that, and I've been describing the same genetic syndrome for the past 15 or so years, but every time I do it, I learn something new. And it's in the question that the parent asks, or sometimes I'm explaining it to the child, and it's in that question. And I actually tell you a little story, and I only tell stories of patients that I have explicit permission to do so, but I saw a family yesterday, I forgot actually, but before the lecture I saw an extra patient. Who was from out of town, who I've known the family for 10 years since the baby was in the NICU, and he was in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, for 6 months. And seeing him at 9.5 years old and doing was truly amazing. And it was at the point where, I mean, over the course of the years, I've spent hours and hours talking to this family and explaining things. But yesterday I said, well, do you have any questions? It's always sort of what I start with. And they're like, no, what should we be asking? And I was like, if you're good, I'm good. But it was the first time I'd actually talked to them when they had no more questions, because everything was going really well, like there's still things to deal with, but it was truly amazing. And I felt an inner peace because I felt like we've gone through this journey together and we figured it out. And it was pretty remarkable.
I think I'm constantly being surprised by the assumptions that I have. I mean, every day I'm interacting with just completely different types of people. I've got people who have been in the trades for 30 years. I've got Ivy League educated architects. I've got, multi-million dollar donors to projects. And my biases about the people I'm talking to are constantly being challenged. I remember I had this one foreman when I first started. He was a really rough and tumble guy, and everyone on site was just terrified of him. It was like, stay away from him. And I was in charge of him, which he thought was pretty funny. And I remember sitting with him, and it took like maybe 6 months. He would give me these one-word answers, and he was such a jerk to me, frankly. And then eventually he figured out that I was good at math. So he didn't like doing math. So I did his math, I did his layout in the field, and he would teach me a little bit about history. And little by little, he would kind of let me in a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then I remember one day I was sitting down at a table, and we were silent next to each other, obviously, because we were always silent next to each other. And he said, so, do you like podcasts? And I was like, yes, I like podcasts. And then he proceeded to tell me about this, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's one of those like women-run murder mystery podcasts that he was just obsessed with. And I was thinking to myself, I've been so intimidated by this guy for so long that I never thought to myself, what does he do with his free time after work? What's he into? So I love that. My industry is the only industry that I know of where intellectual labor and manual labor have to sit at the same table and interact together and make decisions together. And I think that's just the coolest. So it's constantly teaching me to ask those questions.
So I started working at the Gates Foundation in 2006, and I was told by Bill, you won't have any money to give away until you come up with a strategy. So I said, well, can you show me a strategy? Well, no, this is the first one for the whole foundation. Anyway, we spent a year and a half coming up with rationale for why it would be worthwhile to invest in women's health and family planning, and specifically in urban areas of Africa, which are growing rapidly. And he's a tough audience. I mean, he'll ask you a million questions. He's all about data. And anyway, after a year and a half, we passed with flying colors, and we're committed $630 million to program throughout African countries, in cities specifically. What did I learn? I learned a lot about theater. The man has a temper, and I'd heard it expressed at other people's, when they present their strategies. I took his wife to Nairobi, to an urban slum, and her security guards were there, and they said, if anything happens, we're out of here with her. You're going to stay here. Anyway, they were sort of retired Navy SEAL types. So what can I tell you? It took a lot of inquiry to find out from others at the foundation how they had passed with flying colors, and then how to implement the programs once the money was delivered. Thanks.
I'm going to steer the conversation in a little bit of a different direction, since today we are celebrating the 120th gym drill. What memories do you have of gym drill, Bryn Mawr, or Bryn Mawr in general, and do you have any other favorite Bryn Mawr memories or traditions?
Oh, gym drill. When did it move from Friday to Saturday? No, it's back on Friday now. when did it move? It used to be on Friday. Anybody, any?
Late night.
Okay, because one thing that was not in my bio is I'm an Orthodox Jew. So that was a big problem when it moved from Friday to Saturday. We used to walk. So, and it's about 3.5 miles from my parents' house. So it was one of the challenges, but it was something that we did, and it was just part of the year. My sister is here also, is a couple years behind me, and we walked too, and we're actually going to walk tomorrow to the Alumni Day.
I was the French braider of our class. I killed till girls line up outside. I got you afterwards. I absolutely, this time, the hour before gym drill, I was just like a machine French braiding girls' hair. So that was, and then I think, just ingrained are the dances. I don't think I could shake them if I wanted to. My poor girlfriend, I introduced her to the concept of gym drill via YouTube a couple of days ago and performed all of the dances in our living room. She was mortified. So yeah, that was I love gym drill. It was a blast for me.
I think I liked it best when we got to dance with sticks. That's what the stars really cool.
Do that?
The grade class still does like the sword dance every year, and then there's one cultural dance that I know involves like really large sticks. Like the tickling dance. I know that our class did it. I think the middle school's doing it now.
That was always so intense because it was like, is anyone going to drop the star? Don't drop the star.
There was always that you can try again. Like everybody come back in together and give it one more try.
No pressure.
Not at all.
Kind of piggybacking off of Bryn Mawr memories, is there a class or club or activity that you participated in at Bryn Mawr that you hope is still happening at the school today? Can you tell us about it?
Does the senior room still exist?
Do you guys still paint it like a theme?
Yearbook's no longer on pen and paper, right? That was no. Actually, I learned to use Adobe Photoshop my senior year in yearbook, which I use all the time now.
Do they still do field day in the elementary school? That was always like, I would wake up like I was going to battle. The whole team, war paint on my face. I'm gonna mess people up and whatever the answer is.
This is kind of, again, piggybacking off that question. Is there anything that you see now at Bryn Mawr that you wish that you had while you were growing up at Bryn Mawr, or anything that you wish to see in the future?
There's chairs to sit on in all the courtyards. We used to sit on the ground in circles at lunchtime. Yeah, we were told in the tour they were new. There's a lot more space and a lot more gathering space, I noticed on the brief tour. That wasn't, we always gathered, but not necessarily where people wanted us to gather. But there's a lot more thoughtful space to do that, which I think is really nice.
What advice do you wish you could have given to yourself when you were a student at Bryn Mawr? What advice do you have for graduating seniors who are heading off to new adventures?
No pressure at all, but I would say stop and smell the daisies along the way, because it's really not just, as much as it seems like it's the end goal, and I'm saying this after 24 plus years of education. I was 40 before I got a real job. But it's really important to stop along the way, because you never know when you take that year off in Europe and you meet the love of your life, or you basically go down this path instead of that path in a park and you meet somebody else. But it's really important to just enjoy each step along the process, and it's not just that end goal.
That's a great answer.
I think mine would be, if you ever find yourself getting a little bit lost in the big questions that are ahead of you, like what do I want to do, what do I want to study, who do I want to be, it's helped me to to step back from those giant questions and just ask myself, who around me am I inspired by? What are they good at? What do they like? How do they treat people? And just kind of pick the right people to follow around and learn from. Because to me, that has been so much more valuable than what I've chosen to study. It's been more about the mentorships that I've gotten with the right professors in college or with the right mentors in my job. So if you're someone who gets kind of overwhelmed by those bigger questions, take a step back and just go back to your people and let that be your reinforcement and your grounding for what you're going to do next.
Thank you so much. We have more questions, but since we have 10 minutes left, I think we'd like to open it up to questions from the audience, if there are any questions from the audience. Natalie?
What did you think you were going to be when you were at Bryn Mawr, and when did you decide that you were going to be the job that you actually have now? When did that happen?
I think I always knew I was going to be a physician scientist, and even when I doubted that, everybody around me knew that. But I would say the way I got from where you guys are sitting to here was not at all the way I expected it to be.
I think I thought I was going to be a radical art protester. I was going to go around the world like Banksy and do these massive murals that were going to change the world. And I still might do that. There's no such thing as arriving at your career. I mean, especially for our generation, our careers are going to be like this. It's very rare that people take a linear trajectory anymore. So right now, I happen to be working in construction. I would love for art and teaching to be more part of my life. So to me, it's more like I knew that I always wanted to be someone who was going to tell stories, express myself, and build teams. And that happens to be the job that I have one version of that now, and that could change later.
I think I knew I wanted to work with anthropology, but I didn't know how to get paid to do it. I have a first cousin who has made a career in public health, and so I sort of followed her direction and compared notes along the way. She's a mentor to me. How did I know I was doing what I wanted to do? Let's see. I guess 20 years into it, I was working on women's programs that were very satisfying, and I was able to satisfy the donors who would give them the money to make the change. So that's when I thought I realized my mission.
Thank you. Inez, that's why you're here first.
So can I have a two-part question?
Okay.
So what did you think your convocation on when you were a student? And then if you give a convocation today, as you are now, what would you write about?
Mrs. Miller, help me out. What was my topic? Oh, the question was, what do we give our senior convocations on?
Can you give it now?
Thank you. So memory apparently is failing me now, but I'm a black belt in karate, and that was what my convocation was on. So I actually had, memory serving, my karate teacher actually came so we could demonstrate some things here. I don't think I broke anything on the stage this time in terms of wood, I mean, not other things. But yeah, that was the convocation. Now, I actually went on an amazing trip, and this idea was planted by Mrs. Thompson, who was the AP biology teacher when I was here, and I actually went to the Galapagos Islands back in December. It was the first bucket list thing I've ever done. And I think if I were to do it now, I would do it on something like that. Just watching sort of nature in its most basic state was truly amazing. So if you ever have the opportunity to go, I highly recommend it. But I think that's what I would do now.
I don't think we had senior convocations, did we? I guess I didn't.
Did it on your senior project.
50 years ago.
Actually, this is really ironic. I gave my senior convocation. It was like a satirical, made-up story about our class in 20 years. So it was a story as if, you remember? It was a story as if we were all arriving at our 20-year reunion, and I just, made jokes about where we would all be, just kind of riffing on that. So, yeah, I'm curious. I mean, obviously it was all a joke at the time. I joked that the two Mollys would have found a way to actually attach their bodies and become Siamese twins by then. But yeah, that's what I did mine on. I don't know what I would do it on now. I'd probably make you all listen to something that I want to talk about, like, safety and construction, which is
Build something on stage.
Yeah, I could. That is a really fun fact. I can't build. Let's be very clear. My girlfriend is sitting here. She is a much better skilled laborer than I am, but I do the managing and I do the math. Yeah. I'm surprisingly not handy.
I would love to see all of those sometime. But maybe one more question?
We're in Susan's class, and it's our 50th reunion at the trail. Construction here, it's wonderful. Would you French braid our hair before we
I don't know. I got some cute nails on, so I'm not sure. They have daisies on.
To do this for the entire school.
Yes, exactly. It's precautionary. Oh my gosh, yeah.
We're actually nearing our time cap, so thank you all for attending today's convocation.
Wait. Sit back down.
Thank you very much. Why are you running? Sit back down. I see you over there. Anyway. Alumni celebrating their 50th reunion and older are now invited to join Ms. Sadler at the head of school's lunch in the graduation garden. Everyone else is invited to enjoy lunch at the dining center. Seating for alumni is reserved in the Prunes dining room and in the Carey Quad. Wait.
And one final note, as you exit Centennial Hall today, please grab a copy of Mélange, Bryn Mawr's Arts Journal, and this year's publication is our biggest issue, our earliest publication date, and in addition to including student work, it spotlights one young alumna's contribution too. And students will be on hand in Centennial Hall lobby, in the Carey Quad, and along the portico distributing copies. See you all at Gym Drill.